DTM, that someone's DTM will remain DTM, everything else just disappears. You guys can get a bronze, silver, gold.
Yes, there is not a comparable.
They'll just go away.
Right, I mean, the DTM will be different, slightly different.
Okay.
You'll need it.
But a DTM will be DTM in Pathways.
It will be recognized as a DTM.
Okay. And could someone give a speech in their advanced manual and also the same speech go towards a pathway project?
I don't believe so. The project's It's not going to be like a manual that you can redo. Each one is going to be individualized.
Well, I mean, just here in Pathways, there's a 7-minute speech in Pathways. You have the manual from the old manuals and the 7-minute speech. You just get credit for both.
Only if you're working parallel and you're finishing your traditional program,
Right.
you can use the traditional program.
If you're so far into the traditional program now, it behooves you to take that 2 years and make sure you finish it,
Right.
because the transition is different, because it's not just speeches, it's projects. And there's no way to compare a speech and a project to say you did it. So I
And the
would
projects are
say,
going to be way different than what,
you got 2 years to finish. If I was you, I'd be finishing the program that I'm in. When you're all done with that, you got your DTM, go jump in Pathways and do it all over again.
And you
But
all
a
will have
different way,
sign-on.
because it's a different program.
Right. It'd be different.
So I want to make note of something that was just said about getting credit for both. We can't double dip. So you actually have to choose
One or the
where you want your credit to go for certain things. So you may even have a role that you fill. You either choose to make it a pathways designation or a current traditional program designation. There's definitely no double dipping.
right, like if our elections usually are in June, right? And this will come out in May. You will have to decide if you're going to start in Pathways and use your leadership role forward. You can't do both. You can't keep it in traditional and Pathways, okay? All right, hopefully I'll be able to answer more of your questions, but the navigator is pretty much your guide to most of your questions, and each club will have a hard copy. I wanted to address meetings as well as the difference between Pathways and the traditional program. On your left, all the wonderful programs that we have today. How long do you think speeches are going to be in Pathways? Pretty much 5 to 7 minutes. The advanced may change right now. But in addition to all the wonderful recognition and leadership programs that we have, we will now be able to store and have an online record of our evaluations. You will also have feedback on your base camp with the badges, exceptional, courageous. Right? Multiple people can do evaluations if you select. You will have access to everybody in the club. Of course, you have a few other people, but only one is going to do the oral evaluation. Sometimes when someone's practicing for their competition, you might have a whole room and multiple people do their evaluations. Well, this way you can record and save time and just send some other comments, as an example. Or you just want maybe the officers to respond. The badges and the certificates, those are available on PDF. I like to call it PDF-able. Everything online will be available in original state in PDF. All right, we went from 68 competencies to over 300. So there is no apples to apples. All right, before we had one communications path, right? We had competent or advanced communicator, and then we had one leadership. Now you have officers, be familiar. Distinguished Club Program, or DCP as some people call it. Every 6 months we keep track, right? And there are areas that we have to meet. How many CCs, how many more CCs, advanced, leadership. During the 2 years, we will be able to use a combination of the traditional program that's on your left. All those acronyms look familiar. So the new people, don't even worry about it. You don't even look at the right side. And when I say new people, how many people in here have only done 1 or 2 speeches? Everyone's done a competent communicator? Okay, so you'll want to jump right into that. How many people have done less than 5? Kind of recommended if you've done 4 or 5, you probably, or less, you probably want to start fresh in pathways, because there's no time limit. You can do it at your own speed. But again, you still have that choice. All right, so this is in addition to our other DCP points. Paying your dues on time, right? Going to TLI each 6 months. And what's the other one? This one? We have 2 sets of TLIs.
New members.
New members on each time, right? You have to have 4 new members each time.
Paying on time.
Right,
Dues.
membership dues, right, right. So those 4 along with these 6. And we all get 10 points, right? President's distinguished. All right, I'll pause here in case anyone has questions. Does this make sense? Because this gets a little confusing for people that are in here. And whoever's going to be the VPE next time will be straddling 2 sets of roles. So the CC is going to be equivalent to 4 level 1s. Level 1s are not as intensive as an entire CC book in the traditional sense. Okay? So instead of having 4 CCs, we'll have 4 level 1s and 2 level 2s. And as you get to level 3, there will be varying degrees of more applicability towards your final goal. You will also have leadership goals in there as well, like Toastmaster. You still have that will be embedded within the levels. Oh,
I have a question regarding, let's say that you have 2 CCs and 2 more CCs, but then you have, or you say you have some of the lower levels from the old system, and then you have, can you combine the 2 to get your Distinguished Club program?
you can combine them however you want, as long as you get 6.
From the old and the new?
Yep. I mean, you could have all 6 of traditional.
Right.
That's fine. And that's something that your officers, I noticed you meet earlier, they want to consider before we switch over, because we'll have goals that are due in June. So you probably want to get these taken care of the first 6 months, right? Because it's going to be very difficult to get the level 1s and level 2s in 6 weeks. That makes sense, right? Okay, so we'll probably stick to this throughout the first month, and then the second, then we'll start getting into the new plan.
For the next 2 cycles for DCP,
Mhm.
it is going to have both
Yes.
new people going forward with those goals. How would we combine them to present to Toastmasters International the goals so that we know that we're going to meet the Distinguished Club or President?
Like I said, the other 4 are exactly the same. Those haven't changed with the attendance and the TLI and
Right.
the members, which is 5.
Right, I understand that, but these right here are different. For
Right,
example,
so you can do any
right.
combination.
Oh, any combination.
Any combination. If you, for the first half, I would imagine we'd all stick to the first column. Because we'll only have 6 weeks to attain the right side. Now, going forward at the end of December, that's where it'll take a little bit of strategic thought. Should we go ahead and finish off in a CC or someone in the traditional and maybe finish off under their leadership? But again, it's a personal decision and a club strategy, if you will. Like now, if you're in 2 different clubs, you can pick and choose which designation you want to each club. can't give the same speech twice in different clubs and get credit. You can do it, but you only get credit for one. Okay. Matt?
So for anyone that wants to be a DTM, there's only a certain amount of area directors. It's almost like Toastmasters is playing musical chairs with who could be an area director before the 2 years is up. And you can't be an area director, you can't be DTM, or you do get an opportunity. What is Toastmasters going to do about that?
Oh, you mean as far as a year
Right.
annual leadership? We get credit as pathway guides. There's a lot, how many, at least a couple dozen people that are pathway guides in our district. So there may be other opportunities at a district level. There's area, besides area directors, area division directors.
But you can't be one without the other. You can't be a division director until you've been an area director. So, you know, that's the only first step threshold that they can do it. And when you're only got 2 years like he does,
Right.
and he's finished most everything else with the exception of those couple of things, he needs to get access to being an area
Right.
director within the next 2 years to fulfill his requirement or lose out and have to transfer and go all the way back over to a new program.
Same with
It could be 4 or 5 of us
the
in
other
this room.
leadership, you still have to do your other leadership programs as well.
It could be 4 or 5 of us in this room or more that want to be DTM. There's only certain many area director spots.
That's something that we could ask. We could put that, write that down
And
as
that
a
could be a
question.
catch-22 that no
If you
one's
have a
thought
pen,
of yet.
we can ask that question to
You can
them.
move
Because I
to-
don't want to answer that
you can move
question
to-
for them, whether there will be, because, you know, you've done your due diligence.
Right. Maybe they'll make special case or one area directors and or 2 clubs just to get one in. I
I'm
don't
not
know.
They
really
did it the
sure.
exact opposite. They filled you up with more clubs this year than they have in past years. Instead of 5, you had 6.
But what about the pathways ambassador and these roles? Are they available for someone like Matt to?
They're available, I don't know that there's any new,
There's
No.
no
because
need.
we're the
all
last.
filled.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was a one-time thing for the rollout.
Okay.
Because after each club gets educated on it,
Right.
there's no need.
Right, 'cause we're the last club to
I
get.
have I have a follow-up question regarding, I coached a new club, and they probably will go pathways.
Right,
Wow.
that's fine.
So how long does it take for them to be Distinguished Club program? This is a new club that I just finished coaching about a month ago. So
Are they an active club? They
They're an
have
active club,
members?
yes.
Okay, they start with May.
Okay, but
Sure.
how long does it take for them to become a Distinguished Club program, being a new club? They all have to move to pathways.
You mean, do they get 6 months or do they get a year?
Do they get it, does it take a year for them to get the Distinguished Club program?
We can ask that
Designation.
question.
Or a new
So for
club?
new clubs,
Yeah, how long does it
I-
take for them to achieve all of this? 4 levels of 1s, 2 levels, all the way to?
I mean, not every club is gonna get that their first year.
Okay,
I mean, just even if their
Right.
clubs
True.
have been around years, that is our goal.
right.
We
okay,
all want to be a distinguished club.
Right,
Even experienced clubs don't always make enough goals to get those designations,
right.
especially your corporate clubs, because they just don't participate. They're not in it for the same reason we're in it.
Right.
So
Yeah, sometimes are,
sometimes it
They've
doesn't
been
matter whether it's a
voluntold.
new club or not. New
Correct.
club, I've seen new clubs catapult and go right out.
Correct.
But there are new clubs that, yes, they're forced to go into this new program,
Right.
but they may not have the motivation
Yeah.
to see that through. Whether, I mean, are they a corporate club that you just started?
Yes, it was.
Yeah,
corporate.
so-
actually, I think, I mean, we've done presentations on a few of the corporate clubs, and they're pretty excited about it because a lot of the new projects are geared
Right.
towards
Right.
learning how to give a podcast, a webinar, blogs, more relatable to work or leadership. So they may have group projects, they, may be working together, they may accelerate and do better than some of the community clubs. I mean, it really depends on the personality and the leadership in each club. Each one's different. Every club has its own goals. Okay? All right. Local support. We now have the support from Toastmasters International. We have our district leadership. We have our chief ambassador. We have ambassadors like Deborah and Pathway Guides. We will be available for several months to help guide the officers in this transition. We want you to feel free to questions and email me or us, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. We will have webinars. We'll have a number of webinars where we will encourage the officers, the VPE and the president, with the new VPE and the old president. And I wanted to mention, who's the secretary? Will you be running for secretary next time? Do you know what your board, your slate of officers is yet?
Not yet.
Okay, yes, we are too. Now, not only will the president have access and the vice president, but so will the secretary have access to base camp. And base camp is where levels will progress. Before you have your hard copy and have it checked off by your VPE. Now when you attain the next level and you have all your evaluations for each level, if for some reason, and we know the VPE role is a tremendous responsibility. So we have the backup as the president, now you have another backup, is the secretary. So the weight on your shoulders has been It's easier to get a president than it is to get the VPE, right? Some clubs have even considered possibly getting a printer, you know, to print out their portable printer. It's a thought. We're considering it, but we don't know. Janelle, do you have the Pathways kit?
Yeah, I mean, it was just I don't know what else we're gonna use,
I
right?
will tell you in your Pathways kit.
Okay, I'll go with them.
You pass that out to all your members, okay?
I have a question. Just want to clarify, you probably should know this, but what do you mean by competencies?
Levels. So level 1, level 2, level 3.
So our
Achievement.
competent communicator has
Yeah, that's right.
10 competencies. Is
There's
that, could you
10
compare,
activities, there's 10 activities.
because you're saying today we have 68 competencies and now we're going to more than 300, I'm not sure
Oh,
what the
you mean like-
comparison is.
Okay, this advanced manual, you know, there's like 67 more of these different manuals. These will be online, these will be multiple versions of different ways that you can go. Like there's different, you have choices, you have elective projects that you can select.
For example, the advanced manual for humorous speeches would be considered one competency. Is that what you're, I'm just trying to understand where you're.
It's hard to make that correlation.
There
It's
isn't necessarily a correlation from traditional
Yeah,
to.
considerate competencies are levels of recognition or accomplishment rather than comparing it to what we have now. Just like
You really can't
anything
compare
else. You can't
competencies
compare
to
because the
levels.
requirements are different.
Well, I'm just confused because that's what was done in the presentation. You were comparing 68 competencies to 300 competencies, so I'm just not sure whether.
It's the availability.
Availability,
The
they're
difference.
showing what
It was
we're at now
limited.
and what we have the availability new now, later.
Could you give us an example of what a competency would be?
Well, it's exactly, the core competences were,
So,
So the big
so
ones.
interpersonal
Mhm.
confidence, public speaking, and then each category is broken down to many little things.
you
Right,
know,
like
Levels.
you-
sub-competences over those.
They all
Levels,
have
but
5 levels.
So
You
vocal
could branch
variety
out.
would be one
you
competency.
could branch out into like networking is one of them within another collaboration. So we don't have that availability. I can't tell you what those 100 are right now because some of them are still being created. The ones I do know that it is limited for the printed version.
So,
There are some that aren't available yet.
so for guesswork, for speaking would be like eye contact, vocal
Oh,
variety,
you're talking about the
body-
evaluation?
No, just one particular
But you're gonna
competency
look at-
What's
of
an
of
example
many,
of
Like
a
a
competency?
skill.
of like 300.
So,
Like a public speaking competency would be like eye contact,
Oh,
Vocal
okay, well, your
variety.
evaluations
No.
will be
different
the same.
skills on there.
no, of the 300. Right now there's 68
Well, but-
competencies.
Okay, but
But
let's
those
say you're doing a
68 broken down.
podcast.
Yeah,
They will still evaluate you on your vocal variety, your presence, your eye contact, your resources. I mean, the first page will be tailored. That first page is gonna,
well, we're just trying to
Different.
kind of guess what the competencies are or were
well,
currently.
once you pick your path,
Well, the
then you'll
well, the
have the rest.
68 current ones.
What I,
No,
Well,
you're
let's not
saying
say
the current ones, don't
competencies,
worry
let's have
about
levels.
If you want to try and compare the current to the next one, that's going to be difficult to do because you're only doing speeches in your basic manual. Here, you're doing speeches and projects in order to get an accomplishment of level
Wouldn't
1.
A competency being, you're competent doing this and you weren't before. Now you have achieved a competency with eye contact, vocal variety, pausing, whatever they may be. I don't know if they are. but wouldn't
Criteria
that be the list
evaluation.
of 68.
Well, let me explain, I mean,
Okay.
the evaluation, the difference in this program versus what we have now, there's no room for whitewashing. You know
It's
how we get up there and say, oh, you did a great job, I can't think of anything because you're an inexperienced Toastmaster and you're evaluating an experienced one. Now, I can't think of anything you did wrong. Well, the difference in this program is it's not one page with 5 categories where everybody would put 5 for everybody, whereas 3 is the norm. In order to get above a 3, you almost have to be perfect,
Right.
and it's very unlikely that anybody's perfect.
Yeah,
in
you'll
the
go
way
from
the new program
exemplary
is.
is 5.
It's
More
set up.
means in development, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with
It's set up to
that.
push you to be better
Right.
than it is to just let you get designations just by merely putting in the time. This is forcing you to do it, but the difference is you don't have a choice. You have to do competent communicator, you have to do, now yes, in the advanced, you can pick advanced manuals to work on. Here, you pick paths to work on instead of 2
Right, you
advanced
wouldn't have to do all
manuals to be
10
an
of those, right.
advanced communicator, bronze, silver, gold.
Right.
You're picking manuals. Here, you're picking a level, but you can go multiple paths. And once you accomplish the goals in level 1, you get a designation that says you have fulfilled the competencies of level 1. Now you're on to level 2. But it's not just speeches. It's speeches, projects, things that all go along with it, which is why employers for corporate clubs are going to love this program a whole lot better because it's geared towards things that they can use within their
Okay,
workplace.
well, these are your
So the
resources.
project, for example, a project would be a podcast, a webinar, is that a project?
It could be, but like I said, we don't have access because it's not available till May
Yes.
15th.
Okay.
So I'm not gonna,
You don't know exactly what the project is?
no, we know that some of them will, based on, since 2010 when they started, they researched what does the workforce want, what does leadership, what do the members want. So each one will be different. I mean, you could be on the same path and do different projects. So I can't guesstimate, you might change your mind next month on what your project is.
No, I understand, but I just wanted to have an example of a project,
yeah.
versus
Well,
a speech.
A blog, a webcast, a webinar,
Right, okay.
okay? A networking actual application.
One thing, Anissa, I will note it as a question, because if they came up with a number of 300, they must have a list of all those sub-competences that fit under those core
Right.
competences. So we can find out what
Yes,
that list
the
looks
300
like,
is
because
a
that's
Yeah,
really.
there's a list of all.
That's a
the
question.
They came up with a number for some reason.
That would be really great, because someone sat down and said, there's 68 competencies in our traditional program, so what are they talking about?
Yeah.
So we will look to see if
And
they
you'll
can
see some
provide
of
that
them
for
still
us.
have faxing on.
Suppose somebody wants to, is in a pathway, wants to change to a different pathway. Must they reach a break, like level 1 or level 2 before they change, or can they be applied, what they have, what they've done cannot be applied to another pathway?
I think that's a
Put that as
good
a
question.
That's a good
But
question. We'll
think
ask.
about the program we have now. Let's say you finished your basic manual and you started and you ran out and grabbed 2 advanced manuals, entertaining manual and humorous manual. You get halfway through it, you're bored with it, or you're not really what you thought, so you go out and buy 2 more. Yes, you can continue and jump to another 2 manuals, but you haven't finished those others yet. You spent the time and the effort doing them, but you haven't got credit for it yet because you didn't finish the
But
manual.
the difference is, that you still have your level 1, which is consistent across, everyone.
You would still have a level 1, but if you went and started level 2 path in
You would have to
something,
start
and
over. That would
then you
be
said,
my
I don't
best.
want this one anymore, and you want something else, you're gonna have to go back to number 1 and fulfill number 1 in that path.
Yes.
In order to, you can't laterally move from
Right, so back
level
to
2 here
zero.
to another path because you didn't fulfill
Whereas
your
now-
Right,
one.
one speech.
Whereas
Okay,
now,
I'm going to
communicator-
continue for the sake of time,
Okay.
because usually we take the questions at the end. I just wanted to kind of clarify
Okay.
1 or 2 things before we went on. These are the resources in your Pathways rollout kit that Nell has in her box that you will get to keep. Is the hard copy navigator. Yes, you can look it over, read it over, share it with your club members, and you will get a better idea of what to expect from Pathways. You will also have a USB drive with all this information, including this card that shows the difference between the traditional and the new program and how to log on. Another great asset, you will have an online application for new members. And you'll have an introduction. And also in there, you'll see 3 pins, pathway pins, for the first 3 people that sign up. All right?
That's
When
what
you
we-
sign on, you will see this on your base camp. And you will get to navigate your own. You will have access to your education as well. One thing I do want to mention, when you get on the computer tips, you will have to disable your pop-up blocker for this program for base camp. Right, you don't have to do it for all your other programs. So keep in mind, you'll have to disable your pop-up blocker. All right? As I mentioned, we will be here for you, not physically unless you want us to come back, but we will have virtual webinars. We will have emails. We will welcome questions. Probably I'll have a few in the next week or 2, but most of the questions will come after May 15th. How many members are members of multiple clubs?
Say that again?
Multiple clubs, more than one. You're the only one? Okay, I won't get into all the details, but you will have an opportunity to select your own club and where the projects will go to, and you will have access to 2 pathways. Okay? And you'll work with your VPE.
Okay, so we're not gonna have any access to any of the projects, levels or whatever until May 15th?
You can go on to TI, everyone knows how to sign on to Toastmasters International, right? You can look, there's some general information there.
But I got
But
access.
yeah, you won't have access to an entire pathway. All right, there's your login, you will sign up, you'll see the screen for now, and you'll be able to see some general information. So we already took a lot of the questions, so we have time for a few more minutes. How long is your meeting? Probably have other. Okay.
Are you gonna have an online log of frequently asked questions and answers?
There is a master Q&A national that's about 300 pages right now. So first thing I do is I'll check to see if these questions have already been asked. And if they haven't, then we can send that to our chief ambassador or to TI to get those answers.
So those of us who finished the first competent communication manual, who finished that first book, are we like nowhere? We're like, we don't have any credits that are.
You have all the experience, you'll know how to
No,
do
no, but yeah, the
icebreakers,
experience,
how
of
to-
course, I agree with you. But we get there is nothing that is, that
No, you will not, the CC will not transfer over.
we have to start.
Unless,
I mean,
yes.
It doesn't matter. I mean,
Yes.
I like very much.
Yeah, and you'll have a whole lot more choices. The votes are the votes. The good thing about competent communicator is probably one of the, I think personally, what do you think, Mo?